Welcome to Slaying Excel Dragons video number 8. This is the video series that accompanies this book, and we are in Chapter 4. Hey, let's look at our topics. Stylistic formatting is the topic. First topic in Chapter 4. We actually have a few topics in Chapter 4, but this video will do stylistic formatting. Here's a bunch of things that we'll do. And let's just take a look. We'll go over to our start file. And of course, if you want to follow along, you can download this by clicking on the link below the video. Here is our report. We're actually on the sheet called Store 1. Here's our report we need to print. There's some products and some months and some units sold inside the table with some totals. Let's take a look at our end result. Now, this is the finished file. All the start and finish files are downloadable. But let's take a look here. We've done some formatting. It looks like we've centered this title, some formatting for the labels, done a little bit of number formatting, and created a chart. Now, I want to jump back over to that other Excel workbook that we have open. Now, notice what happens when I use the keyboard shortcut Alt-Tab. When I hit the Alt, I hold down Alt and then tap the Tab key. Notice this comes up. This allows me, if I'm still holding the Alt, and I'm just going to tap the Tab. And you can see I could cycle through any open window. I could see a description of what file it is. That's the finished one. There's the start one. Now I'm going to let go of the Alt key and I jump back. But let me show you a keyboard shortcut that works just between open Excel workbooks. Instead of Alt Tab, you use Control Tab. So I'm going to go Control Tab, Control Tab. Oh, that is so cool. So I can jump. It ignores all the other open windows and only jumps back and forth between the Excel files. Now, Control Tab. This is the end result. Control Tab. Here's the beginning result. All right, let's start right off the bat by centering this. And the most common way to center is you highlight with your selection cursor, like that. And most people use the home ribbon and merge and center. I never use merge and center, and the reason why is there are some problems with it. For example, if I merge and center, it actually creates one big cell out of all of these. And if I were to copy the whole table and try and cut, I'm sorry, not copy, but cut and paste it over into B1 or C1, it wouldn't let me. It would give me a message that says, please, in fact, let me just do it. Watch this. Now I'm going to highlight the whole table with Control asterisk, and I'm going to Control X. Well, wait a second. I can't even click in cell B1 or C1. So it disallows cutting and moving the table sometimes. In addition, there's problems with formulas. If you make a formula based on A1, and inserting columns sometimes is not allowed. You'll get an error message that says you must unmerge these cells before doing this operation. I'm going to Control Z. Control Z is undo. I undid the merge and center, so no problem. I'm going to show you the alternative. Now, the ribbons have lots of great things in them, but they don't have everything. So you could use this launcher to launch the alignment tab of the Format Cells dialog box, but of course, we're always going to use Control 1. And there we have our Format Cells dialog box. Now, we've looked at the number tab and number formatting. Remember, number formatting is that facade on top of the spreadsheet. But now we want to look at some of these other tabs. Lots of excellent things here. And again, Format Cells and these tabs have everything for formatting the cells, or almost everything, whereas the ribbons do not. Alignment. Oh, we just need to go text alignment horizontal, and there it is, our center across selection, which will avoid some of the problems that merge and center has. Now, there's some other elements to the alignment. You could do wrap text here, wrap text up here. That just means there can be multiple lines in a cell. You could also slide the text so that it's not horizontal, but so that it's at an angle. This is the only one we're going to use here. Now that I have this open, I want to do some other formatting. I want to go over to Fill. Remember, Fill is this button up here on the ribbon. Now, the most important thing about Fill and font color is this. If you pick a dark fill color, and what I mean by dark is the value is dark. For if you have a dark value color, you better select a light font color. And the reason why? So you can read it. So for example, sure, I could pick black fill color. And then, of course, when I come over here, I'd pick white font color. But what if I pick red? Let's just go ahead and, before we finish this, I want to select white font and, sorry, black, which is automatic, and the fill red. And then come and look here. Now, you can see that it looks like the value difference is not that big. But the way you really tell, and this is like a trick to tell whether the page will be readable or not, squint your eyes. If you squint your eyes and the difference between the two is very small so that you can't see the difference, you know the value is not big enough. So if you were to pick red, Control 1, I, of course, would go with something really light like white font color. Now you could see, sure enough, when you squint your eyes, you can see the difference. And so on the printed page, it will look good. All right, I'm going to highlight this. I'm not going to leave it red. I just wanted to point that out. That's a common mistake that people make when they're adding fill and then printing. All right, so we have our fill black, our font color white. Let's see. There's some other fill effects. If you want to get fancy, I pretty much stay away from these. But if you want to have some fun, click on fill effects. There's all sorts of amazing things here. And then more colors. I actually often go here because this, a lot of my favorite colors like that blue and that accounting green are not in the list up here. I'm going to click Cancel. Now, these colors here actually come from a theme. You can set your theme in the Page Layout tab. So these are defined by which theme you select. All right, so fill, font, stuff we've seen before, font style, font size, underline. The color we just did, notice the preview because it's white. But there's some other interesting things. Superscript if you're doing x squared, and subscript if you're doing x sub 1, x sub 2. That's actually a font that you apply to the exponent or the sub. That's if you're doing math. All right, I'm going to click OK and see what this looks like. All right. Now, click somewhere in the table. The next thing I want to do is add borders to the entire table. How do I do that? I'm going to use Ctrl asterisk on the number pad to highlight the whole table. And I'm going to use the all border up here. You click the drop down and you have all sorts of options. I'm going to select this one. Now this is borders. We'll see the borders tab in the Format Cells dialog box when we want to do some fancy stuff to the bottom line. All right, now I'd like to do this. Now how did I do that? I highlighted ranges that are not next to each other called non-contiguous ranges. All you got to do is just select the first range and then hold Control and highlight the next range. Now we can apply some format. I'm going to do a fill. How about like a light gray? And then I'm going to Control B for bold. Now watch. See the bold? We could use that button, but when I Control B, watch this. It shows up as kind of a gold outline. That tells you that that's applied. Now let's come down here. We're going to highlight all of these numbers, and we're going to add a number format. Now notice these are units. So we don't want any dollar signs. But I would like to have a comma. Two ways to do this. One is to come up and use the comma style here. And the comma style's nice, no dollar signs, but it shows 2 decimals. So I'm immediately then going to go don't. Now I'm going to Control Z, Z, Z. Another way to do that, and this is usually the way I do it, just because I have a reflex. Anytime I do number formatting, I go Control 1. I click on number. Now here I can decide whether I'd like to use a separator or not. I would. I also have the power to say how the negative numbers show up, and I can change the decimal. So there we have our sample. Click OK. Now those are units. I do want to talk about the difference between accounting and currency number format. Now we had a couple videos on number format, but I didn't talk about currency and accounting. So I'm actually going to copy this and come over to the side. And we're going to click in J1, Control V, Control V. And notice the screen tip comes up, and I want to keep source column width. So I'm going to what? Control W, just as we learned in video number 2. Now, I'm going to change. I want to edit this label up here. Now, when you do center across selection, there is a slight difference for merge and center. When you merge and center, watch this. I'm going to merge and center just for a moment. It doesn't matter where you click because all the cells are one single cell. I'm going to Control Z. You can watch the gold go away. Control Z. When you have, whoops, when I did merge and center, it undid the center across selection. But when you're going to edit center across selection, the common problem is people click there and there's nothing there. But no problem. You just have to click in cell, whatever the first cell is. Now I want to double click units, zoop, and then type sales. Double clicking tells the word to become highlighted, and then enter. All right, two things. In fact, I'm going to copy this, Control C, and then click right there, Control V. First, let's look at accounting. Accounting, I'm going to Control 1, number, accounting. Now, the difference between that button right there on the number group on the Home tab does accounting by default. Here, and it shows 2 decimals. I don't know why this is showing 0, probably because last time I did it, I showed 0. But there it is, 2. The only difference here is if you wanted to change the currency, it's kind of handy to come here because you can change the currency. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at this. 2 things about accounting. Accounting will always line the decimals up. Usually currency lines the decimals up, but no problem. In some circumstances, the decimals are not lined up. So people like that about accounting. The other difference is that this $ is fixed on the outside, always. Now let's look at currency, Control 1, currency, and then I'm going to select, oh, the reason why I had 0 decimals is because there were 0 decimals there. So I'm going to say 2. I can select the symbol again and how the negative number shows up. Now accounting didn't let us decide how to show a negative number, and the reason why is because accounting always shows their negatives in parentheses. One reason some people use accounting is they don't like those, currency. One reason people use currency is they don't like to see the negatives. I'm going to click OK. The $ is called floating because it'll always be right next to the number as opposed to fixed. And in this circumstance, all the decimals are looking fine. But sometimes when you have ragged numbers, they don't line up. That's the difference between accounting and currency. All right, now let's come back over here. We got to finish this report, and then we're going to the formatting, and then we're going to make a chart. Last line, the total here at the bottom. Sometimes at the bottom of the report, you want a thick line here and a double line at the bottom. Double line means this is the bottom line, the totals. So I'm going to highlight. And now what we're going to do is I want just a line, a border at the top and at the bottom. I don't want them right here. So let's see how that works. Control 1. Borders. Now, really, when you want to get fancy with borders, you have to come here. There's just no way of doing it from the button up here. Here's the preview. It's always in left to right order. So you select your line, you select your color, and then you apply it. Now, the interesting thing about 2007 and 10 Excel is this was totally reversed in earlier versions. So even though you always had to select a line first, then a color, then apply it, this used to be over here, so people would get confused, right? They weren't used to going from right to left. But anyway, it's fixed in this version. Now, I'm going to select a thick line. And remember, we want it here, not here or here. So I'm simply going to click right here. Now, you could go like this, and it does just the top, but I like to click. It feels like I'm drawing or something. Now, I come back over here. I select my line. I select my color if I were going to change it, and then I draw it. Again, you could either do that one or a couple of the things about borders. Let's go take a look, and then I'm going to come back here just for a moment. I'm going to click OK. I don't see anything. Oh yeah, you got to click over here. And there we have it. Now, this formatting is very common. It comes from accounting. This solid line means that I just did a calculation on all of the numbers above. In this case, we added. Sometimes you'll see reports where you have a solid line that's not adding. It could be like multiplying or calculating cost of goods sold or something like that. So the solid line means I just did a calculation on the numbers above, and this is the answer. The double line means this is the bottom line. This is the whole point to the report. Income statements, you'll commonly see this because it means I just did a calculation on the number above, which means I took revenues minus expenses. And then you'll see net income and a double line because the whole point of the income statement, the bottom line is net income. Let's take a look at borders just quickly. I'm going to Ctrl 1. Sometimes when you get people start applying borders all over the place and it gets a little bit chaotic. So one way is to come here and just go none. And then you can start over. Now watch this. If you're going to build this whole thing by hand, you'd select the little line and click there, there, and there. Then you'd select the solid line, click there. The double line, click there. So it's always. All right, I'm going to click OK. Now let's click over here. Looks like our borders are working just fine. All right, next we want to make our chart. Now I want to go look at that chart in the finished workbook. The keyboard shortcut to jump over to that other open Excel workbook, Control Tab. There it is. We have a line chart. Now look at this. This is kind of interesting. Kites. Oh, here's this line item here. And then there's a point for each one of the months. So actually, we have two labels, two categories for this chart. Notice the boomerangs, these items here will show up in the legend. And the column headers show up here. Actually, the way it works is if this is longer or equal to this, then the column headers show up in the horizontal axis, and these will show up here. If it's the reverse, then the chart is a reverse. All right, this chart is not hard to make. It's basically 1 or 2 clicks. I'm going to Control Tab. Now we have this set up. This is called a cross tabulation table, where kites February. So we have some variable here, that's the product, and some other variable here, that's the month. And then we've added all the units sold, right? So it's actually, if we looked at the original data set, which we will do in Chapter 6, this would be a huge data set. And this is a summarization report summarized by 2 variables. Another way to think of it is we added these only when we found a February and a kite for the line item. All right, that's summing with 2 criteria. But the point here is later in Chapter 6, we'll see how to create this with things like pivot tables. So this is a very common setup. So what Excel has done is they understand that this is a common setup. So to create a chart like we just saw, we can do it in basically 1 or 2 clicks. Now, labels here, a blank here. You simply highlight it. You don't want to highlight the totals. If we had totals over here, we wouldn't want to highlight those. All right, so now where are charts? Since we're inserting something, we go up to Insert. And sure enough, there's a big, huge chart group. Now I'm going to choose a line chart. And we'll talk a lot about this in, I forget which chapter. I think Chapter 7 I do charts. We'll talk about the difference between all the charts. Lines just kind of are good to show a trend over time. So I'm going to select line, and I'm going to click on this one right here. You got to be kidding me. I didn't do anything. So this is really a 1-click chart. Now I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. Actually, while it's big, we can look at it. The January is down here. Notice this formatting. This formatting actually came from the cells. Remember, if I point to the edge, I see that move cursor. Right there, that's the move cursor. We'll see it in many situations throughout this book. See right there, number formatting. So because these numbers came from the cell, it sucked the number formatting there. All right, so put them there. It's got the perfect legend. We can see the trend over time. Really, the reason we even do a chart is what? Immediate visual impact. Here's all the numbers, right? We do like the numbers because that's all the detail. But really, what's the pattern? What's the trend? This gives you an immediate visual impact. We can clearly see all sales are kind of going up. right in April, accessories go down. Looks like boomerangs and kites, right? The sun comes out, so the boomerang and kites go up, and accessories and toys go down. All right, now we want to size this and fit this right below the table. So I'm going to use my move cursor, start right here and drag it, kind of eye this right about there. And then I want this to come right to the edge. So I'm going to hold Control and then roll the wheel to zoom out. And then I'm going to point down here on the edge, that diagonally pointing black arrow. I'm going to hold, just click and drag. That's about good right there. Now, there's what we'd like to print out. Notice there's something on the page over here that we don't want to print out. In our next video, we'll use this exact formatted table and chart, and we'll do page setup. And page setup is very important because this thing is not going to print out in a pretty way unless we do page setup. All right, we'll see you next video.